Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending this special city council meeting here at City Hall, November 14th, 2023. Would the clerk please confirm the roll?
All council members are present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. With that, I have one announcement before we get started on the main agenda topic, which was, and council, I think I notified you a little earlier tonight. We have a new employee, so to speak, in our presence. Yesterday, I think it became formal that Captain Lynch is now Chief Lynch. And so we wanted to recognize him for that and appreciate him taking that role for North Bend and Snoqualmie. So appreciate that.
Mark.
That was for you.
We'll never get him in here on time again. This evening, council, we've got, of course, two items. The number one item is to fill our council vacancy. And I'm going to introduce kind of the way that we're going to go through that. As you have probably already noticed, the candidates have left the chambers. We'll be calling them in as we go. This is agenda item number 2, AB 23-131, council vacancy and appointment. So let me go over with you what you've already seen in your packet, but particularly for the public to understand. So first off, we have applicants. They'll be called to the podium in the following order. And first I want to mention in the packet, it does mention Christina Rustic and Councilmember Miller both have withdrawn their applications. So we do have 5. And so the order will be Errol Tremolata, Sharice Malik, James McEachran, Terry Potmeyer, and Sam White. Each applicant will be given 1-minute introduction of his or herself to be followed by council questions. The applicants will be asked 5 questions, which are attached in your packet and to which they have been provided a copy of ahead of time. The applicants will have up to 3 minutes to answer each of those questions. And following which, council members, if they want to do a follow-up question, you'll have that opportunity, and we'll work through that in order as well. Council, with your indulgence, I'm just planning to go by seniority. After those questions, and by the way, the pro tem will ask the 5 questions. Following all question and answer, we'll give the applicant 1 minute to make any closing remarks that they have. After all applicants have been interviewed, council will enter into executive session per RCW 42-30.110(1)(h) to discuss the applicant's qualifications. Council will then return to council meeting, and a motion may be made to appoint an applicant, or the council may choose to continue the process for further deliberation or to solicit more applicants. If an applicant is appointed to position 4, an oath of office will be administered by me, and the newly appointed council member will immediately join the council. And at that point, we'll continue on with the rest of the evening's agenda. And I do want to point out that following the second executive session this evening, before adjournment, we will take public comment. So that time. So with that, I think we are ready then to get rolling. Unless I'm looking at my counsel who's looking at me. Are we ready to get rolling? Okay, thank you. So if we could get our first applicant, Errol Tremolata. Good evening, Errol. Thank you for being here tonight.
Hello.
Spot at the podium. Just to be sure you're aware, we're going to start off with 5 questions that you've already had, and then council will have an option to ask any additional questions.
Okay.
Overall, we're shooting for no more than 3 minutes per answers to those 5 questions. If it starts to get a little long, I'll let you know so we make sure we keep going.
Sure.
Madam Pro Tem.
Okay. So Errol, what are the biggest challenges facing the city?
So I've kind of broke this down into two.
I'm sorry to interject here. I promised a 1-minute introduction and I didn't afford you that.
Oh, sure.
And you didn't even correct me. So if you want to back up, that's fine.
Sure. So my name is Errol Tremolata. I live out in Tanner, newer area town, husband, father of 3 young children, Opstead Elementary. Currently a planning commissioner for City of North Bend, previously served on salary commission. Also served on the board of directors for Snoqualmie Valley Little League. And was also a member of the member advisory board for Salal during last year's big discussion with city about the contracts. Pretty active in the community with youth sports and my daughter at Ignite Dance Studio, Skyview Park Soccer, Skyview Basketball, and those type of things. And then most recently, last week, ran for election for city council, received as of today 1,122 votes. Came up a little short, but happy to be speaking with you tonight.
Thank you. Sorry, I threw you off. Back to you.
So Errol, what do you consider to be the biggest challenges facing the city?
So the 3 kind of columns I kind of put this into is 2 are jointly related, and really I walked around for 6 months talking about financial independence, right? And it's more of strategically partnering with neighbors, regional partners, the Snoqualmie tribe, areas where we can create a tax base that's sustainable over multiple generations. Obviously, my children's generation, many people I talked about how their children had graduated through school and now would like to come back to North Bend or currently living with their parents. How do we get them on their feet and on their own? And do we have a tax base that can support the infrastructure that would do that? And with that, part and parcel is probably the biggest reason I ran for council, which was stimulating small business growth. Most of my biggest supporters are small business owners here in town. I have a commercial real estate background. For about 15 years prior to moving to Washington State, I worked with small and mid-sized companies for commercial leasing, sales, and development. Most of that being the tenant advocate, so representing their needs and understanding leasing costs, startup costs for small businesses, and how do we get a mom and pop out of the gate and on Main Street and operating and making money, and from both sides of the table. And then honestly, better regional contracts. I think we have a number of partnerships across our city right now that some are great, some are not so great. You're going to have a big one for council next year with Snoqualmie, with police services. I think everyone is very happy with the services that they get from a day-to-day basis, but we had a loss of a chief last year that didn't afford North Bend to really have a voice in that. And I think that's, from a taxpayer's perspective, I'd like to see that improved. And I think a lot of the neighbors that I spoke to this election agreed. Those are my 3.
Thank you. Question 2.
What would you like to see North Bend look like in 10 years?
This one is near and dear. I've outlaid it as a fully connected town. So one of the amazing things that I think about North Bend is that its topology is fairly flat. So whether you live in Tanner, Forester Woods, Skyview, or down by Bybee, the Blueberry Farm, it's easily accessible to the city center. We have great holidays that's coming up, right? I think creating a more vibrant, dynamic downtown center and fully connecting that. So I'd love to see in 10 years Trucktown all the way to downtown, fully accessible with small businesses, whether it's coffee shops, cafes, restaurants, what have you. I can tell you we're pretty excited about the Tanner Park that's going in, our neighbors, and we saw the engineers out a few weeks ago measuring out the sidewalk. So obviously council's been dealing with some of that. We're excited about it, but I think a fully connected town, kind of from end to end, would be really what people move here for, which is kind of park the car in your driveway and have the best trailhead in North Bend be your driveway, whether you can walk or bike to the donut, to the bakery for donuts or where have you. Most of us do it anyway. Not fully safe, but we still do it, and it's great and fun. But I think that would be a really big advancement for the town, and really keep the rural mountain town that I think everyone moves here for, right? To really enjoy the town all Monday through Sunday, not necessarily have to leave town for other things, or if they do, on a minimal basis.
Thank you. Question 3.
Why are you wanting to be selected for this open position? What contributions do you want to make and what value do you bring to the table?
Well, clearly I would like to be selected for the position because I think any seat on council needs to be representative of the voters. And fortunately, I just ran in a race last week and I have some real data to share with you that I received over 1,100 votes. And so I represent a certain contingent of the electorate, obviously not the most in that race, but a good chunk of your neighbors who I think some, or I should say most, probably identify similar to me. A young family moved into town, we expect to be invested into this town for many years, are very active in various parts of the community. And also on the east side of town. I mean, Heather's a neighbor of ours and the only one on the east side of town. And I think having a diverse perspective on council, both for where you live in North Bend and kind of where you are heading in the future of North Bend, may not be great. You may not agree with the opinions every time, but I think council should represent a diverse group of opinions. I think that's how North Bend gets better across the board. And what I bring to the table, I think, is the commercial development background. So I think obviously we've grown as a town, and as you grow, the level of service demand increases, and I think the commercial development needs to follow. I think there's a lot of discussion, at least on the campaign trail, of what does that look like? Is that small, medium range businesses? Is it a larger business? I've kind of worked across the gamut. Day to day, I work with jurisdictions on annexations, entitlements, zoning, rezonings, building permits, planners, planning commissions, and city councils across the country. Most recently, I've done it for a very large company, but I think I can bring a unique perspective on. I understand what the developers need, yet I moved to a small town who doesn't really want that. And so I think I can appreciate the negotiation at the table, the planning at the table, and allow the development process to pan out and hopefully add value to kind of moving the ball along and getting that development that the town not only accepts, but it actually wants.
Thank you.
Why did you choose North Bend to be your community?
Well, we knew we were coming to Snoqualmie Valley for family from California. And I think when we toured the valley fairly extensively, what we liked, we came from the Bay Area, which is embraces the outdoors quite a bit. And so I wanted a place where I could raise kids that could hopefully spend more time outside than inside. And with other families that would embrace that and a growing community. We didn't come from a place that had a lot of kids on the block. My neighborhood has 76 kids in 48 houses, and it's fantastic. And now going through a few years of these community engagement programs with Little League and Ignite, I've been overwhelmed with just the activity of parents and folks that aren't even parents, just want to see the youth of the town succeed. I think we got a little lucky on picking North Bend, but I think we've clearly gotten what we had hoped for, which is a growing community that really wants to self-identify as North Bend and really nothing else.
Thank you. Please review the community vision statement, city's mission statement, and brand statement, and tell us what provisions you strongly support and which you would propose to modify, if any.
Yeah, so I went through this quite a bit. I mean, I think I touched on it a little bit. The rural character of this town is, I think, really important to everyone. It's certainly, like I said, one of the major reasons myself and my neighbors moved to this town. But I do think enhancing the existing built environment of downtown is also incredibly critical. And I think the discussion around that is pretty dynamic as you go around your neighbors and see what that means. But I think all of our local businesses that I've talked to through the campaign really want that. You know, we We have a massive leakage study that I know you guys all saw of I-90 and how much money leaves town on a regular basis. And we capture some of that. You know, folks coming down for a hike and grab a burger and a beer, but how do we turn that burger and a beer into a few more bucks? Something that's more sustainable for multiple small businesses in town and more longstanding over the years. So as much as I agree with the rural character and natural beauty, I do think the enhancement of downtown needs to be amplified, I guess is a better way to put it. And also, I would focus a bit more on maintaining adequate infrastructure. I think when I sat on the board, the member advisory board for Salal, that came out a lot, not only for Salal, but for the city about infrastructure and where do we land on that on either side. I think the town is such a different place than when it was where it was 10, 15 years ago. But me, with a development background, infrastructure can outlay the future and make life much easier for small businesses downstream. I mean, at the end of the day, development is an underwriting. And if you're a small business owner and you want to open up a butcher shop and you are required to do X, Y, and Z, you need to go get a loan for that, or you need to have the cash up front. For a developer, any additional cost that you lay on that, it goes into the underwriting, right? It's simple math. I'm going to load up my cost with X and I need to achieve a rent that's Y. And as much as we would think that that can be met, a lot of it is just passed right on through to the tenant. And either your small business gets hit with that or they don't even develop it. And then you're just stuck with an empty storefront or an empty lot. So I think there's a healthy balance there on what we can do proactively as a city to invest in some infrastructure to move that ball along, while also getting the support from potential developers to provide spaces where our small businesses can flourish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, this is your opportunity. If you have any follow-up questions, we'll start with Mr. Rosen. Get your mic. Thank you.
You think I'd know by now. I think you touched on it a little bit, but I would like to hear a little more conversation with you about growth. It's clearly, as you just ran for council, you probably had quite a few conversations about it. Tell us what your vision is. What type of growth do you want to see, and how do you see us managing that growth, which may be coming?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the items I touched on, being on the planning commission and working on the comp plan, which obviously is a big task for council going forward, will be helpful. I mean, I have concerns. I understand the arguments in favor of some growth. I do think my position that I outlaid it to the constituents was I'd like to tier the growth into two groups. One is take care of our own people first. So you talk about the baristas and the beer tenders and local folks and the seniors who would need housing. Let's figure out what that number is and let's focus in on that. And is that downtown multifamily, low rise on top of some of these buildings, or ADUs? Let's have that conversation. Additional growth that might be coming out of Olympia, I think is another conversation. And I think there's a lot of pushback from that, at least what I've experienced on the campaign trail. So I think growth that I want to see is the growth that's going to help the workforce here. And also, like I said, the young family, the young college graduate who's coming back and loves the Valley and would like to live in North Bend and commute to a job in Seattle, just because they want to be in this lifestyle. And that's a missing piece here. It's a big missing piece. And I heard that time and time again on the campaign trail. So personally, I separated a little bit. I think we need something there for that workforce. The larger growth, I would hit pause on, and I would question where we need to go to meet those needs. I think we've seen it across Washington that some states or some cities are pushing back on the state with regards to GMA. That also goes back to one of my top priorities facing North Bend is, if that's even an inkling of a consideration for North Bend, we sure as heck better have the financial stability to push back. Because if not, then we could find ourselves in trouble.
Thank you. Mr. Gothill.
Yeah, this is a question I hate asking, but it's an important question, one of these kind of open-ended questions. So tell me a time that you were on a commission or planning where you had to compromise or work with it. You had one idea, your constituents or partners had other ideas. How did you work through those?
On a planning commission or like a personal?
Whatever you want to describe, where you've had two different opposing ideas, you had a different idea, the other person had an idea. How'd you come to the middle, or how did you make a decision? How'd you work with that person moving forward?
Well, it happens actually quite a bit in my line of business. I'm trying to say this without getting into obviously business detail. So there's, as I said, I work with planning commissions and entitlement sites all the time, entitling sites all the time. I had a site where the client was clearly the most advantageous thing was in the underwriting was to build this building. It made the most sense. Costs were excessive. I was concerned about the outlaying property to, if we didn't build it, we'd lose entitlements. And they weren't prepared to move forward. They didn't want to move forward without a tenant. They were concerned about the outline, and we went back and forth for weeks on this. I disagreed and committed. I said, let's hold, we'll wait, we'll find another strategy. And through that, we didn't build the building, but we worked with the city. We found permitting path strategy to extend entitlements, a bit unconventional, but it worked out to the client's favor. They didn't have to outlay that major capital investment. It was doing the unconventional, thinking outside the box, something that wasn't straightforward, that commercial development. It was, the client really doesn't want to do this. What do we want to do? How can we find a way that no one's looking at right now? So it's a constant communication, a ton of meetings with the city and planning department, and we found a path forward. My path was to build a building. It made a lot of sense. I followed the math, but like I said, I disagreed and commit, and we still found a good outcome.
Mr. Elwood.
Thank you, Your Honor. And please remind me, how many questions are we asking? One each. Okay. Let me scroll a minute.
Let me get my water.
Thank you, first of all, for running and meeting residents and taking interest in the city and doing that. It's a lot of work, I know, firsthand. And thank you for saying, you know what, I'm not done yet, so I'm going to come here in front of these folks and see if I can still be a part of this. So I appreciate that. My question is kind of, I think, simple. I mean, we can get into tactical things, but what promises will you make to the residents of North Bend should you be selected by us to be on this board?
Well, I think what I demonstrated over the last 6 months, and I would hope the voters that voted for me would agree with that, is I found myself in a lot of conversations where we disagreed. And by the end of the conversation, they supported me and my candidacy. And I think what it came down to was, I don't have all the answers, but by nature and by my 18 years in doing development, the only way you find success is through collaboration and bringing in subject matter experts, challenging yourself to go ask somebody who you think is going to disagree with you, what do you think about this? And seeing what kind of feedback comes back. You don't have to necessarily agree with it and run with it, but you should always check and with somebody you think is going to disagree, to kind of gauge, where are you at with your strategy right now? And have you looked at it from every angle? So I think that's what I've done my entire career, is brought in sort of best in class, whether consultants, architects, planners, what have you. I find being listening is a very important skill that I think I probably early in my career I didn't do enough of, and I've clearly learned. And like I said, I think being able to hear somebody disagree with you out loud and not take that personally, not take that as if you should dismiss it and move on, but trying to find that healthy balance to, okay, how do I get this person somewhere in the middle, and how can we move forward? And I think that's really the biggest promise, is putting in the work to listen to not only council, but the folks on the ground, my neighbors, my friends, the folks that I walked around town with, and say, what is your problem right now? What is the biggest thing facing your family in this town? What would you like to see changed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Errol, it's great to see you. Thank you for stepping up. You did a great job. So that's a lot of effort, and I appreciate that. My question's it's kind of all over the board here for this, but I changed it in a minute, right? So can you share with us a specific situation where you found an innovative and creative solution?
Work or personal?
It doesn't matter.
Sure.
Sorry to do that to you. I apologize.
No, I mean, I think personal might be better, but,
And you can have fun with it.
what's that? Well, then I will, because I was leaning towards personal. I just wasn't sure if it was, well, I'm very proud to be a father of three. And when I became a father of twins, boy-girl twins. And it was tough out of the gates. My wife and I were in over our head is probably an understatement. And putting twin babies asleep is difficult, especially when one's down and the other one's yelling. And obviously being a new dad, I didn't know what to do to help. I'm just standing around and listening and taking orders. And my son would not fall asleep ever. He just never would, whether it was mom or anything. And I decided one night that I was going to be a helper. I was just going to take charge. We're going to figure this out. It's like 2 a.m. She hadn't slept in 5 days. I grabbed him and I wedged him into the couch next to me and kind of created what I would say like a human cradle between me and the couch. And from that day forward, that kid would go to sleep every night on the dot whenever I did that. And we got a good 2, 3, 4 months of sleep out of that. I'm not really sure how innovative that was, but it sure as heck worked. And it's probably my single greatest victory as a dad, if you ask my wife.
Thank you, Errol.
Ms. Colon.
Yes, thank you, Errol. Definitely for running. It's a big deal and anybody who does it knows how hard it is. My question, you talked about regional contracts, better regional contracts for North Bend. And I guess, do you have a plan on how to accomplish that and financially, maybe not partnering? What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, so I talked to a number of you and staff and a number of business owners about that, and whether, I think part of our financial independence in the future does mean, should we own our own contracts? Maybe not now, maybe now is not the right time, but in 5 years, 10 years, at some point, the Band-Aid is going to get ripped off and we're going to say, let's go for it, because I think it'll make sense. So I think a feasibility study makes the most sense out of the gate. What does it look like? Would it be, whether it's police services, do we have our own police force, or do we take a contract and own it and sublease out the contract to another partner? Do we have a regional contract that might look like Eastside Fire, right, for those type of services? I don't have an answer to that. I proposed on the campaign trail that a feasibility study I think makes sense at this point of our growth. I certainly don't think it's something that's a tomorrow solve, but I mean, if we're not studying this and figuring out, planning it out, it will never happen. And I think at some point in the future, it makes sense. My wife comes from a very, very small town in Central California, which was under 6,000 people. They put up their own police force. It was a top priority for them. Very different environment, very different place, but they decided to do it. And I think there's places all over the country that do the same. So I don't know. I'm not proposing tomorrow that that's a solve, but I do think it's something council should take under consideration, and we should plan out and understand, like Councilmember Rosen said, like if depending on where we agree on growth or where we project the next growth, how long it takes to get there, what is that number going to be? And what's our level of service going to require? I think that's the biggest part of it. It's level of service and being able to dictate that level of service applied to a vote at the polls, right? I think that's maybe the most difficult part for the folks that I spoke with, is if a decision's made with taxpayer dollars, they should be able to answer that decision at the polls, whether they agreed with it or they disagreed with it.
Thank you.
You, Mr. Jocelyn.
Good evening, Errol. Echoing just your willingness to serve. That's much appreciated. A primary responsibility of our representative government is looking after the interests of the city. Any comment on approaches to balancing the interests of individuals and those of a city government?
And can you elaborate when you say individuals? Are you saying
the city had interest is going to build things, and that might impact people's property, impact their ownership or an interest that they have as a personal stakeholder in this town. And yet as a city, you've suggested the building of infrastructure, someone may be impacted.
Got it. Yep. 100%. Yeah. I am a property rights advocate through and through. I don't think you last 18 plus years in real estate and not believe in that. and I think that's where you collide with the rural character of this town and how do you implement the change. I don't believe I would personally ever want to force something on an individual. I think there needs to be hard analysis on what that means, the impact of that to that individual. I think because that might be a blocker down the road, I don't think the work shouldn't be done, right? The feasibility of that work, the understanding of what that potential development or infrastructure overlay should be. I think a lot of people, when you mentioned a certain infrastructure development, have an instant backlash of, we don't want to do that. But I think you can educate them along the way. But the answer still might be no, but I don't think the city shouldn't do that work, right? To understand what's possible, what would this infrastructure addition unlock for the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years of the city, and then weigh that. Is it worth it? And I think being more engaged with the community on that front, I'd like to see. I've attended a bunch of council meetings. I don't think many others have. I'd like to see how we can engage more of those individuals to show up or engage, whether it's video or some way, right? Whether it's town halls or what have you. Because I think there's a lot of conversations going on outside of City Hall when some of these serious conversations are occurring. And it'd be great to get more of that feedback to council live and in person or in some fashion. I think my experience is it probably tends to come in the 11th hour. And that's not great either.
Thank you. So that's a round of questions for you. Thank you for sharing all of those thoughts. This is your time to kind of summarize. I'll give you about a minute for that.
Sure. I'll end with saying I never thought I'd run for public office. It was never something on my radar. I say fortunately for me, 12 years ago, I met my father-in-law who this town was lucky to know as well. And he's probably the best leader I've ever met. And I think great leaders inspire future leaders. And he spent 39 years giving back to his community. And I saw what that meant to friends and family of various communities. And I realized you can be a leader, you can be a helper in the most basic form for your community and make a difference. And you don't have to necessarily have a uniform to do it or anything. You can just decide to dive in and decide to do it. And so really, if it wasn't, watching what Perry has done over his career, I probably wouldn't be inspired to do this. But once again, the coupling the community that we found makes it feel like it's going to be worth it every time I step into a role, whether it's the Little League or something to that effect. And, I feel like I have a strong voice. I don't know that, I'm sure not every single one of you agreed with my message on the campaign trail, but like I said, 1,122 of our neighbors did. And I think that's something to hang my hat on and hopefully for you to take into consideration with the appointment. I'm proud of what we did. And I think, we met a lot of people who didn't know us before, but thought that the message and the vision that we had was right for the community. So that's what I'll leave you with. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Tremolo. I appreciate you putting yourself out there.
Thank you.
Jen, could you bring your next candidate? Good evening, Mr. Malley. Come on up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me thank
Just going to give you a real quick, going to give you about a minute to introduce yourself, whatever you'd like to say as introduction. Then Ms. Cullen's going to present the 5 questions that you've seen previously.
Mhm.
And we're going to give council as a whole an opportunity to ask additional question follow-up. And
Perfect.
We'll give you time to give a closing statement.
Thank you, Rob.
There you go.
I would like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity to present myself as one of the candidates and get opportunity to get to meet all of you. I have to admit, I have not attending that many council meetings, seen it online. So my introduction, I'll keep it brief. My name is Shiraz Malik. I moved to this beautiful area almost 11 years ago, back in 2012. And since then, I've been living here and just realizing recently that this is the longest I've been in one city. I've lived in 6 countries, more than dozen or dozen and a half cities. And every time I chose, even when I left Seattle area, to come back to Pacific Northwest. And within Pacific Northwest, I chose to be here for its natural beauty, the feel of the community, the small town, and of course, the people. My background is, my professional background is IT. So I have worked in IT for last 22, 23 years. I also have background in design. And currently I'm working as a consultant, IT consultant with Starbucks. Previously I've been employed with Microsoft, T-Mobile, and all the companies that are around here. But that's not, I feel that's not that interesting part. My passion has been, by nature, I've been an entrepreneur. I've opened and sold businesses last 12, 15 years. And my current 2 businesses, one of them is I do design handmade knives and then sell them over online. And my passion is that I pursued during the pandemic and opened a food truck that's in Bellevue, one of the top food trucks right now in the city. And I want to open one outlet in the community here as well. I have my wife and my son, who's now 5-year-old, is here with me since we moved here, is going to elementary here. So that's my background. Originally I'm from Pakistan, but I've lived in mostly Europe, Middle East, and now went to school in Minnesota, University of Minnesota, did my bachelor's, undergrad in IT and design.
Thank
So that's my brief introduction.
Thank you. Ms. Cullen?
Yeah. So thank you for stepping up and wanting to work as a council member. The first question is, what are the biggest challenges facing the city?
In my observation and my time that I've lived in, I think the things that can improve, of course, every city has challenges. One of the things that I always cared about is to have a more vibrant core district of our downtown. I feel that has a lot of potential, and it's not where it should be. As far as small businesses is concerned, as well as how many foot traffic you get, that's one of the things. Other things that I feel that needs some improvement in within the community is in some infrastructure like footpaths and footpath, but sidewalks in US. So sidewalks is another concern that I have for a while, where I see that there are disconnected sidewalks. And overall, we have good trails, we have infrastructure, but there is not a smooth pathway within the core districts and neighboring close communities where people can walk through. Cedar Falls is one of the good example, right? Across us, there are areas which were developed by the developers, and they have footpaths, the sidewalks, but there are gaps there. In the dark, I feel that's becomes dangerous. The other areas that I feel that we can work and improve on, facility-wise, the town was created more than 100 years ago, and some of those facilities are now old. The growth that I have seen, even for last 10 years I've been, is amazing. If you compare it for a century before that. And I don't see that that we are able to connect to cope up with all the services. Of course, there's a limitation of budgets and the matters, but things like Aquatic Center, That's one of the causes that I do feel that we need to have that and similar facilities, enhanced services, either replace them or make them more available to more people. I see lines on the waiting. We have been improving on our police system. We have been improving our medical services. I've seen the roundabouts being built since I moved, which is a great addition, I think, to regulate traffic. But without losing the small town touch, we also have to see the ground realities of how people are moving, how the demography is changing within the community, and what the needs would be changing. So I would say those three are main areas that I feel that we can do some improvement on.
Thank you.
And what would you like to see North Bend look like in 10 years?
I can say what I don't want North Bend to look like. Let me start with that. I don't want it to be a big giant city with big buildings and heavily populated urban jungle. And because that's the reason I moved away from all that and chose to be in this town. What I do like to see is, again, I'm not against having growth, people move, and that's how we also help finance some of the projects. But we can maintain that. I think we can preserve that feel and good, but while improving on infrastructure. So one things I would like to see is definitely improvement in our core business area, where I feel there are things that can be done that can bring more visitors in, and also encourage the community to come and participate and stay there. To be honest, if I have to get things, 9 out of 10 times I'm traveling to Issaquah. That's the closest one. And I would like to have more of that in town I'm not talking about opening a Walmart, but I'm talking about shops and businesses, encouraging them that align with the vision that we have. That's one of the things that I would like to see. Keeping the small town feel and bringing the community together, working together with the new implants that are coming and making it more livable. And the most important thing is not losing the people that are living here, and make sure that it's affordable. One of the things I see, and I see it all across, is affordability is one things that is changing all across the board. How do we make it that people are still affordable, can afford to live here? We want all people from all walks of life, and we need that. That's what builds communities. Without losing those, we can still promote growth. So a more vibrant city, more vibrant core, more welcoming, and of course, preserving the feel that makes North Bend a North Bend.
And why are you wanting to be selected for this open position? What contributions do you want to make, and what value do you bring to the table?
Sure. I want to be I want to provide service. I have thought about it for many years, but my projects and my businesses and things like that didn't prevent me for investing time into it. The reason I moved here from very beginning, I love the area, I love the community. I love that baristas knows my name. I know the person in the post office and on the first name basis. I want to provide the service to the community. I lived here, I chose to put my roots here, and this is where I feel home. So I want to go give back in any positions. Council membership is just one. I mean, if I can contribute in any other way, I would love to. So that's the reason. And what can I bring? I feel that I bring a different set of skill set and experience. Of course, I mean, I'm from IT background. I've run businesses. I have traveled. I have a different cultural background. All of that brings good ideas. I can contribute. I can bring ideas that from the people who actually migrated here, or people who are implanted from Seattle to here, representing more of the newcomers. I don't consider myself newcomers anymore, but there is that dynamics and there's whole demography that's changing that I feel that I can help bring that to the table as part of the team and discuss and find some solution to challenges that are now and what are we going to face in the future. So that's the reason I have experience in project management. I've done that for years. I've managed multi-dollar projects. I have opened, closed successfully and failed businesses. So I've gone through a whole gamut of things, and I'm always open to new ideas and trying out things, and while making sure it's fiscally responsible and bringing everybody together. So that would be my reason.
Why did you choose North Bend to be your community? You kind of answered it already, but
Yeah, well, again, yeah, I think first and foremost, it's the natural beauty of this place. It's just amazing. Living so many places, there are very few towns that I really loved, and there is no other town that I would not want to, that I would live other than North Bend. I mean, I've had an opportunity to move to places, but that was the first reason. I used to come hike here, and I found that this place is beautiful. Second is, of course, the community. Once I moved here, I find that you don't see that in others, even within Pacific Northwest, that people want to know about your life, want to see how's your family, how's things going. My son is growing. I go to UFC and people know his name and ask about it. I know somebody's having a wedding, or it's just a feel of that community. I think we miss that. As we grow bigger, especially more urbanized, that's what miss. And that's a vacuum that you feel. I think that's one of the other second reasons. And third thing, I have to admit that also affordability. Coming a little bit further out of the city was more affordable for us. I looked into Snoqualmie, I looked in Bothell and other cities, but among all that, hands down, North Bend probably stood out. So here I am.
please review the community vision statement, city's mission statement, and brand statement, and tell us what provisions you strongly support and which you would propose to modify, if any.
I would say I agree with the vision statement. The only thing I will point out is what's not clear to me, at least. And as I said, I'm not as involved in city at this time. How do you measure those success out of that? I've tried looking into our city archives as well. We said we want to preserve the small town feel, and we also want to manage the growth and provide certain things. We do have good matrix on. You have the stats on policing, number of crimes, infrastructure. It's very hard to have a tangent value or something tangent regarding what does it mean to be a small town, and what does it mean to community. That is also changing with the new people moving in. So one of the things I think defining that and getting more views on it would be something I would like to see. Is what does the small town mean? I mean, it would be different from one person to other person. As a whole, what is the small town? And then how do we measure that? How do we hit those KPIs or targets? Yes, we can say that. I mean, I know, looking at the history of the town, at one point, this town was targeting the more Bavarian alpine look and feel. And I see the still buildings that. That's probably was easier than now that we are trying to do, which I agree with. But we should have a little more clarity on it. How do we do that? And how do we achieve that? Outdoor is great. So how do we achieve that? What are we saying that, okay, yes, the hikers were coming here before this vision statement was even put forward. Do we have stats on how are we successful or not? So I think that's one of the areas that I would say I don't disagree with any. I just don't know enough, or I don't know at least the stats that will, are we tracking our progress or otherwise?
Thank you. We're gonna see if council has follow-up, Mr. Rosen.
I think one of the most common themes during the election has been discussion about growth and, what we want to see this community look like, specifically on the residential side of that equation. So I'll give you some latitude, but just what is your position on growth? How would you answer that question on the campaign trail?
I'm a realist in general. I dream, I'm an entrepreneur, I dream, but I also see what's reality is. So I always believe in managing things rather than stopping things. Growth is a reality. And why not? I mean, we all lived here and we moved here for a reason. I cannot deny or stop somebody from moving here from things that I love. On the other hand, I also understand the concerns and for the people who lived here, who had generations living here before me, before us, that we should not lose this very reason that people are moving to, or I at least think that why people moved here. So it's a matter of managing it. There is always going to be growth. How do we better manage it? And also not just manage the growth, but manage the services that goes along with it. And also we do realize that everything that growth brings, tax, brings financial, it contributes towards the growth. How do we manage that money better so that it actually goes back to community? A lot of time people, when they are afraid of growth or sometimes they are opposed to it, there are a couple of reasons for it. One of the reasons is they feel that they're going to lose the resources that they have. But we have to manage it. Also, I think it's a matter of socializing that idea that growth doesn't mean we want hundreds of cars passing through our downtown. We don't want big buildings being erected here, but we do want growth to have bringing financial means to finance the services that we really need. So that's my stance on it.
Thank you. Mr. Godhill.
I'm gonna try to do similar to the last question I did. I'm gonna assume you've been on some sort of board or committee. How did you manage conflict in that committee when you didn't agree with people on that committee?
Sure. I have been on boards, which I failed to mention earlier. I was on board for 5 years for an organization called Tasveer. It's a South Asian cultural organization, and it actually holds second largest film festival from South Asia in Seattle. And other than that, I've been on a couple of other boards, mostly nonprofit. That's been my passion, or service community organization. But to answer your question, I think conflict, we can take it as a negative. I see the conflict means it's a conflict of ideas. As long as it's a conflict of ideas, it brings and growth. It brings new perspective to a group of people that may have not have thought about it, how to resolve it. I think we should have an active listening, and then let's professionally talk about what are the reasons behind it. I have seen conflicts. Sometimes it depends on the nature of it, but sometimes it's because disagreement on how do we fund something, or does this match our cultural values or our community values? And we have to take pause and look at what the other person's perspective is, trying to convince it. And I always believe in democracy in the sense of, yes, if everybody agrees to it, then yes, if I disagree with you, I'll still keep putting my input to the community and the committee and whatever board I'm on. But I will go with whatever the board decides. So I believe in building community. I don't believe in conflicts to rise to a level that becomes personal. I think we should not do that. Everybody has a good intention. That's my belief. The way of working may be different, and they bring a different perspective with them.
Thank you. Mr. Elwood.
First of all, thank you for jumping in and updating my opportunity here to serve my community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully you heard what I said. My question is just kind of more high level, but poignant. What promises will you make to the residents of North Bend should you be selected to serve on this committee?
What promises? I can only say that I can put forward my perspective of things. I can say that given what I know, given the current circumstances, I believe that I would like to preserve the feel and the community the way it is, as far as the nature of it, because I believe in that. I can promise that I will do my best at best of my ability to make sure everything that comes to for me for vote or for discussion, I bring honest opinions to it, even if it's not popular opinion, to represent the people that are in my community. I can promise that if things changes, I will not take it as a personal goal to do one thing. I have always believed in being flexible about the reality. If the reality changes, I would change with that. And it all, as whatever my personal views are, putting it aside, I do represent, my job would be to represent people and what the community need. And I will try my best, at best of my ability, to represent their opinion in front of the council or in front of people, try to fight their case. Whatever their challenges, whatever their pain points, I'll bring that forward. And of course, on the reverse side of it, I also would like to take the opinion of the city councils and decisions made here and try to socialize it and put the perspective why certain things are done. It's a two-way street. We are all here because we want to help. We want to participate. But it's also a job not only to bring their ideas to this table, but take these ideas that we decide here or discuss here and make sure other people know. A lot of things, in most cases, when we decide about financing a project, it comes to finance, I'm giving you example. Most people don't know why we don't do something. Why don't we have X things in our town? Well, everybody wants it, but there is a financial aspect to it. And making it a simple, logical argument to back to our community is important too. We want to make sure they understand what we are and why we are doing something.
Thank you. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Shiraz, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Stepping forward. This is a wonderful thing to see your efforts and everybody else that's stepping forward tonight. My question to you is, you spoke about not wanting to retain the small town feel here and not wanting to see this town grow exponentially or large, of course. My question is about commercial and what kind of commercial would you like to see here? Types, and where would you like to see that focus to be placed, i.e. downtown only, east, west of town, towards the freeway?
I would say how I save a town, we have almost three types, and we're talking about city limits. I mean, there are, of course, the town is bigger, but it's kind of adjacent to those areas. So I'll talk about a little bit of that. We have the core downtown, which is the old historic. It has nice feel. It has different challenge in the way it will develop. Then we have the front areas of alongside the I-90, which is because of outlet, the traffic and the requirements are different. And then the third one is more of the further east where the new growth is coming along, but you also have the truck stop and there's a, so every area has different requirement. I think the core, our downtown though, I believe that's our core. When we say core, it's actually where we should start. I think this is where if I vision something, I would like to see it more like a small community or small businesses, more and more should come there. Understanding is very hard, and right, especially in this economy, to struggling businesses are hard to do that. But I also want to bring businesses which align with our visions and the feel of it. Personally, REI is one of the things that I would say, if I could bring a REI here and open a experience center, where they can have a climbing wall and a one REI store, why not? It aligned with the things, it brings the similar kind of things that we like to see in the car. I don't want to see, as I said, I'm not that favorable of having very large, huge stores, but I also want to see some growth in our outlet is dying. I mean, I've been looking at it. I don't know what as a city we can do something about it, but there are visible things that I have noted. I mean, that can improve there. That is one way of bringing people in. There's a commercial area, so we have an opportunity to grow there to have more of that commercial shops and thing, and have more boutique and more small where people can walk around in our core downtown. Of course, the new growth is growing more towards east. I haven't seen any commercial area develop at this point, but I'm sure it will at some point. So that's something that to look into. And the businesses that I see coming here and retaining would be the businesses that not only bring some financial advantage to the town, but also and employ people, but also keep in line with the feel that we want to keep. That's why I give you example of REI, but they are businesses like that.
Thank you. Ms. Colon.
Yes, thank you for applying for this position and putting yourself out there.
Thank you.
My question for you is, why did you not run for election this November?
Why did I run for election? I think a number of reasons, I guess, for that. I have never run in a city level. I mean, I've done very small elected positions, and I would like to do that some point. But opportunity-wise, this came along, and I felt this is something that I can contribute, and I can test myself with a limited period as well, for me to whether it's how I vision, how it is. And I said, I don't have much of the government experience, and I admit that. But I do have experience from the industry, from the corporate world and nonprofits. The simple answer, I don't know whether I would be able to run the campaign the way the political side of that runs at this stage. And I'm not opposed to it, but I just felt that this is an opportunity where I can get some of that and bring my experience to the table. And if that works out, I would love to run in an open election as well.
Mr. Joss.
No questions. I just want to thank you for coming this evening, presenting yourself. I am satisfied with your answers and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. That's true. So if you would like to take about 1 minute to summarize. Appreciate it.
Okay. I mean, I've told most of the things what I have to say. And then I just wanted to say, I admit that I don't have a government experience. I don't have the experience a lot of Canadians may have in the run. My most experience is mostly corporate world and nonprofits, but I have passion. And that passion drives me to do a lot of things like my food truck and my other businesses. Once I believe in something, I give my all. And I believe in this community. I believe in the city. I believe in ideas that can made possible in this town. I think our core downtown for years and years, I think there is so much potential, not only that area, but overall. And I think we can realize that potential. And I think I can bring some ideas that may or may not be part of the group at this point. So I would, if given opportunity, I would put my 100% to serve the community, serve the city council, and provide my input for the betterment of the community overall here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for putting yourself up. Thank you. Jen?
Thank you.
I keep forgetting. Think that I guess you come.
Evening, Mr. McEachran, if you'd step to the mic. We were going to do this, give you about a minute to introduce yourself, then we're going to have the 5 questions you've seen before presented by Mayor Pro Tem Colon. And we'll ask council members if they have any follow-up questions and give you about a minute.
Thank you. Good evening. The first minute in public comment is the most potent, so I'm glad not to have 3. Thanks for doing that. First of all, I am a new resident. Want to emphasize that again? I'm a new resident. That's a powerful reason for me to be here tonight, because as a new resident, I've had to go through the system. Utilities, et cetera, et cetera. I'm here to say that I ran for office once in college to be president of senior class. I got 17 votes. That's a problem because I went to Whitworth University. The administration building is named after my third cousin, 8 times removed. But I find that when I come forward to serve, the easiest pathway is to volunteer, period. And sometimes you get appointed. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Colon?
Thank you for applying for this position. The first question is, what do you think the biggest challenges are facing the city?
I think back to 1909 when the city was incorporated. And I think, what in the world were they thinking? And who asked the question, looking ahead, what will we become? I'd like to think about that. What were the questions and how did they plan? 117 years later, we're here in 2023. I realized that I learned about this city from Snoqualmie, the Vantage Point during the pandemic, because we would come out for away time during the lockdown. And our kids lived behind the railroad station, and my wife would say, Jim, we're going to go for a walk. My first thought is, why? Her first thought is, when? So one day when I least expected it, she said, Jim, we're going to walk to North Bend. And I said, why? She said, because once we start walking, we'll feel better, get to know the neighborhood. So beginning in 2020, we began to stay in Snoqualmie and walk. We would walk to North Bend, and my son-in-law would say, do you want us to pick you up? I said, no, I'm going to walk back. And it didn't take me very long to realize when we started thinking about moving, we would go to a city that we had mutually agreed upon. And so we'd walked North Bend for a couple of years. We kind of flipped a coin. Where do you want to live? My wife said Redmond. I said, maybe. And then I said, maybe Sammamish. She said, oh. And she said, what about North Bend? So we began to move this direction because our house sold in 3 hours. And then she said, Jim, the kids in Snoqualmie are selling their house too. And I said, what? And she said, that'll give us a lot of freedom for the next 3 months. I like that. So we began to come and walk and talk and look, and our real estate agent finally said, let's take a look at some houses in North Bend. And I had done my research. I am a reader of comp plans. And I read the comp plan and I said, a lot of neighborhoods, you're going to pick a neighborhood? And she said, let's just go and let the real estate agent show us around. And we began to smell development. Because we went out North Bend Boulevard, I call it now. And I would go, watch this, we're going to find a house back up there. We would look elsewhere, and I see all the signs popping up. And it took me about 3.5 days to say, what's one of the largest challenges here? Development. Managing it and seeing it happen. On the post office, we thought about maybe a little townhouse, and she said, no, we're going to co-live with the kids. And I said, okay, where are we going to live? We ended up in Wood River, where everything has been growing up ever since we got there. What really scares me is when I see the visibility of the new development signs. And I've seen that in Bellevue for years and I go, really? And I read the community survey of dissatisfaction. And I see that growth and managing growth running in at 70% and 72%. That's not bad. There's an opportunity there that I think the sooner it's addressed, the better. And I think that's happening. That opportunity for a plan to deepen community engagement, and understanding for growth is with us from the first days of our beloved community, from the day we walked in here.
Thank you, Jim.
So we're gonna move on to the second.
Anytime you want to do that.
What would you like to see North Bend look like in 10 years?
In 10 years, my grandsons will be 17 and 14. I look at this through the lens of my two grandsons who are living here in their very young years. And I say that grounds me with the insight of livability and well-being must first of all be about what we're doing in North Bend. I'd welcome a site in the city where we're talking about a deeper level of support to be sure that we're using land as good stewards. I think that's an issue that I've faced once in a while. And what I hope for is that I would see a city that kept its inner life together. I think that's downtown because I like beer and ice cream. My kids love the parks and soccer. They're over the top with the swimming pool. They're engaged in multi-generational activity that I want to see them be able to live under in the days ahead. I have one quote. There's a line in the Revised Code of Washington that has always impressed me. Each comprehensive plan shall include a plan, one, and a scheme or design for each of the following. And I think I want to see a scheme well for my grandchildren. That they might have a place to call home where we can dream and be inspired and find some way to really say, North Bend, easy to find, hard to leave, and healthy and safe while you're here. That's what I would look for in the next development towards 10 years. I don't know where I'll be, but wherever I am, I'm going to say the city cared enough.
Thank you. Why are you wanting to be selected for this open position? What contributions do you want to make and what value do you bring to the table?
I think everywhere I've gone in my life, it's been through volunteerism and appointment. I've been a volunteer all my life, mostly in schools and institutions of faith, but also in the cities where I've lived. And I find that volunteerism leads me to a place where contribution makes sense at a table where conflict is seen, valued as part of growth. I'm not afraid of conflict. I am a calmer in every place I've been. I think what I would bring is someone who's kind of come to this place with a foundational view that service includes growth potential and human growth potential. If you've read well the words I wrote, you see I've been involved in human services an awful lot. My wife says too much, but I say, that's okay, that's where I live. And also in housing for a very long time, beginning in about, I can't even go back that far without smiling, but beginning about 1987, an organization I care about decided to get into affordable housing. And the brochure said you have to earn $16.50 an hour based on some Bellevue documents. Well, then what about now? I want to see a place where I can serve in a foundational way around human services, arts and community and economic development with attainable housing out there for all ages. I love to have caring conversation. I love to catch and hold new ideas, move as a team to the future, which serves residents and visitors alike. The way I did that once is I took a stint at the Human Services First Desk through Human Services at the City of Bellevue. And I met people just as Jim McEachern, the volunteer. And I kept thinking, that's what makes me tick. So listen to people, to move forward and say, we're together in this. We're never alone.
You kind of already answered this, but it's a question.
Absolutely.
Why did you choose North Bend to be your community?
We love North Bend. What can I say? Love every part of it. I walked every street of the town. When we walked around, I walked into most of the neighborhoods and checked them out. We ended up in Wood River by a coincidence of the economy, which I love. But I love to know that the kids I live beside, city I live in has lots of options. And to tell you the truth, what I find is when my grandson says, Appa, I see a new store, let's try it out. That makes sense to me. When people say, why'd you move so far out of town? I say, well, I have a gift card for you. Come and see. I have 4 people that have business here. They said, did you give out some more gift cards? And I said, guilty as charged. I just think North Bend chooses us. We didn't choose them.
Thank you. The 5th question, please review the community vision statement, city's mission statement, and brand statement, and tell us what provisions you strongly support and which you would propose to modify, if any.
This was the funnest part of this process. Thank you. Because creating vision statements makes good because they talk about the preservation of a dream of 117 years ago. I love the words under the vision statement, preservation and enhancement. That's a good base for faithful stewardship. Rural and small needs some tending. When I first moved to Bellevue in 1983, it was a small suburban town with green belts that we thought was a great canopy. We were a suburban rural. My wife said, this is so cool, Jim. It was. I like the statement because it says that placemaking is important, preserve and enhance a good base through faithful stewardship. And I think the question is how to. Placemaking can be made anywhere. It takes mutuality of understanding who communicate and talk about how to. We have to say along the way, that vision could change in 2 years or 3 years, depending on what's going on in the community. Mission statement, I like the mission statement a lot. Citizenry might be residents. I love the words create, partnership, and blend balance. Blend balance. My daughter loves the juice place because she says it's healthier for me than where I go to drink at Volition. And I say, but honey, there's a correlation there. You got 2 generations that are loving the place. And guess where I give gift cards out? Volition and Pressed Juices. Provide and support first responders for the health and safety of all. I like the word first responders. The police department has mental health workers now. That's more than police and fire. That's a responder. My son-in-law is a paramedic in Central Pierce. They just got married. And I said, you're my in-house steward of health. And he spoke of your new police chief and said, in Enumclaw, we know him. He's a good guy. That's called a small rural chief. But I didn't know that you were in that area. Trust me, I support first responders as a first initiative for the safe health community. I like the idea of infrastructures. I don't get sewers as well as I should. I get shelters and food banks and economic development. Because those at the same table create a space which I can live in. I think I would love to see a time when that could be reviewed in a council gathering. I'm a word crafter. I'm raised that way and trained that way. There are different words to express the essence of what that is. And finally, take care of the land, the water, canopy. When the elks lived in our backyard for almost a week in the first winter here, my grandson looked out one day and said, Papa, can we have one? I said, no, we have 15 of them. And he looked at me and said, Papa, if I have one, I'll take care of it. Case made. The brand statement, I love brand statements. Small town keeps the character center at the core. That's an opportunity that some would see as a challenge. I have a different view of small community. I was raised in Spokane. That was my small community until I hit Bellevue. But a small community is about community, first of all. Together we build. If I were making a vision statement, I'd first of all start with mission. At North Bend, we. A vision, we are. The third point would be a purpose statement. The verbs of action. To accomplish this, we will build a community in which people are healthy and safe.
Thank you, Jim. We're going to move to follow-up questions by council. Mr. Rosen?
Thank you. Same question I've been asking the other candidates, I'll pose to you. one of the bigger issues facing this community has been discussion of growth and what and how we want to accommodate that. And you mentioned in one of your statements about managing growth. Expand upon that and give us an idea what you're thinking.
That was mostly through human services, and I was involved in creating the Wilburton, the last neighborhood of Bellevue, as a citizen advisory committee. And we talked about transportation with the idea of light rail coming. Light rail will not appear here. I think finding bimodal transportation is good. I see bikes, I see all kinds of means of transportation I would never live with. I see the roads being taken care of. When the roundabouts occur, I remember a guy saying, "Oh no, here they come." And I said, well, my grandson says, "Could we do it again, Appa?" I think it's communicating to people that you've got to get from point A to point B. And how we do that, I'm not a transportation expert. Whenever I've served in a public way under appointment, there's always someone on the staff, thank you, or an expert that comes in that says, let us help you find and discern some of those new ways to make transportation less congested.
Thank you. Mr. Godhelp.
Thank you. Again, go back to the same question I had before. It seems like you've served on a couple committees or boards before. How do you deal with boards or situations where your views were different than the others?
I've always held a position, especially when we were on the Wilburton, because we would have legacy landowners come with their lawyers to the Citizens Advisory Group. And there were moments of deep conflict, and I was not the chair, but I was there representing a commission. And I was asked that question. I said, well, to understand is not to surrender. Because you have a different point of view than mine, that does not mean that I give up on mine, but we come to a collaborative impact of conversation. I know that's hard. I think that's harder out here. That might be in Bellevue, but I doubt it. I believe you come around the mission statement and say, how do we do this together in a polite way? We might disagree, but at the end of the day, I'm going to see what QFC or Volition or Pretzel Juice. We need to talk to each other. I tend to be a calmer in those kinds of situations because I say, let's just let some time fly here. Urgency can be the net destructor of good communication. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Mr. Elwood.
Thank you, and thank you, sir, for stepping up to serve and to join this body. And you're right, this is an interesting point in time. Simple question for you. If selected by this body to serve on council, what promises would you make to the residents of North Bend?
Well, those are kind of the promises I've always made. I will listen to you. I'm a walkabout kind of guy. I will come to town when I am here and I'll just frankly walk around. I begin in these wonderful conversations. Usually as I'm new in town, tell me about it. Then I say, how long have you been here? What would you invite me to do? Either for my enrichment or the enrichment of the community. And sometimes I say, where do you live? That's the scary question. Where do you live? I tend to be a conversationalist. You've already gathered that. I tend to be a storyteller. You might get that. Because when we build that kind of relationship, you know what can happen? Change will occur. That's not frightful.
You. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jim, for stepping up tonight. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
I just wrote my questions, so bear with me. Affordable housing is most definitely an enormous issue here in North Bend, as is elsewhere. Coupled with the lack of affordable housing is the fact that we have the highest rentals in King County currently. Do you have any ideas that you would be willing to share with council about what kind of tactic you might approach help this
I
problem?
was invited to sit with the Snow Valley Housing Task Force, and I sat in a meeting once and I felt like deja vu all over again. We have this housing issue. What will we do? And I reminded myself that it took the Affordable Housing Statement of Bellevue Council was initiated in 2017. I sat on that task force working group. And those particular suggestions are being implemented as we speak. primarily on old church property or school property or places. I just think you have to build an insight conversation because developers are hungering for land, I think. And along the way, people are saying, how far can we go? We've gone about as far as we can go. And you begin to look for coalitions of care. I love the work of the Mount Si Senior Center. I have known the person who's in charge of that once in a while, and I suddenly realized they have affordable housing. I think it's for seniors. What about those who come here and have lived here that will not have a place to live once life changes? I have no magic word on that, except I've read the Snoqualmie housing document. I've read one by, I think the mayor's gathered with the mayor of Issaquah to look at some potentials on how to use land. You know more about your land than I do, but I'm more than anxious to converse about that and be active in participation in any way I can.
Ms. Cohen.
Thank you for applying for this position. My question is, why did you not run for election?
I never run for election. I had the most marvelous experience trying to become the president of the senior class of Whitworth College. I honor you. You guys are what I call the entires of knots. That's just what you do. I don't work well in that environment. I will never stand for, well, my wife says, Jim, never say never. I find the greatest life I live is through strong volunteerism under appointment. It's just where I thrived. If you read my story a little bit, a couple of times they thought, well, finally, Jim is done. Not possible. Because if I don't leave a legacy in a place where I care, then I've not done a good job stewarding my life, if that's helpful. Plus, I walk beside enough people who run for office. I look at them and I say, I am so grateful for you.
Mr. Jocelyn.
Appreciate your time and insights and all the deep thought clearly that you've put into appearing before us tonight. Means a lot. My question, a primary responsibility of our representative government is looking after the interests of the city. Any comment on approaches to balancing the interests of individuals and those of government?
Kind of been working that for a lot of years with regard to my volunteerism. I memorize comp plans, which is, my wife says, that's stranger than reading mysteries. I kind of catch the vision of how we will live together in some degree of harmony, even though we are so different. I have 3 websites from the other people running for council who are deep gardeners, and I don't garden very well, but I said, would you give me some websites so I can learn? Give me 3 things to Google. So they both gave me the thing to Google. I'm going to Google and learn. It's a matter of, we're in this together. Growth is grace, human growth. Growth management is human management. We simply have to sit and talk to each other. Because I will go away one day. My grandkids won't. If I were running for office, I'd be so busy running for office and realizing what you were doing. I'm glad I'm not running for office, but I get to talk to people and begin to say, I'm here to be helpful. I once watched Mr. Rogers buy cat food when my daughter was dancing with Fisher Ballet Theater. There was a big scrum of people. And I said, is someone having a problem? And the person said, no, Mr. Rogers is buying cat food. I remember what my daughter had said once. She said she was at a meeting with him and he says, when you're having an issue, just look for helpers. I think I would want to be a first responder for the next generation.
Thank you. I could give you about 1 minute if you'd like to summarize.
Well, I go to the post office like an old farmer every day. I watch people open their mail. Watch what they recycle. I love that. And today when I went there, I looked at art and industry. And I said to myself, I gotta go there. Tech painting, I gotta go there. Mini holiday canvas, shopping done. Gift cards bought. All is good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Potmeyer, thank you for being here tonight. Come up to the podium. We're going to start off. We'll give you about a minute to introduce yourself, whatever you'd like to say. Then Ms. Colin's going to ask you the 5 questions you've seen, and then I'm going to follow up with any follow-up questions from council.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to be considered for this appointment to the council. My name is Terry Potmeyer. My interest in applying for this position comes from my personal mission and commitment to do what I can where I am with the skills and talents I possess to help create and sustain thriving communities. In addition to being a meaningful opportunity for me to serve the North Bend community, this position is a good match, I think, for my skills and capacities. I have had experience as an appointed council member. I have a track record of committed and creative leadership in human services and the nonprofit sector. I have a strong work ethic and a creative approach to problem solving. I'm in a place in my life where I really can devote the necessary time and energy to the council work. As a relative newcomer to North Bend, which is 5 years and counting, I bring a relative newcomer's perspective and the corollary insights to the work. And I would be honored to serve the community in this capacity and appreciate so much your consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Colin.
Thank you for applying for this open position. The first question is, what do you consider to be the biggest challenges facing the city?
Thank you. I see 4 challenges. The first 3 I'll mention in no particular order, but I think they're pretty closely related. The first for me is managing future growth. There has been a tremendous amount of new housing that's been creating in North Bend. And I believe there's a continuing need to have a really thoughtful plan for continued future development, balancing finite resources such as water, open space, sewer capacity with the requirements of the Growth Management Act, as well as the city's desire to retain a rural character. The second and related challenge, I think, is integrating new residents into the city. The population is growing really quickly, and as new residents are arriving to live in the community, the new housing units that have been completed. And while this is a terrific resource for the city, I think it's important to welcome our new neighbors and to thoughtfully integrate them into the city, paying close attention as the population increases to what needs to change in real time as the population grows. Question for me is, how can the city be mindful and responsive as new residents move in, as population increases? It occurs to me that perhaps it's time to encourage a new kind of welcome wagon in North Bend. The third related for me is affordable housing. I know everybody is aware of the increase in housing prices that's made it so difficult for us to welcome and retain seniors and young families and workers in an affordable place to live in our community. Diverse communities are strong communities, and we need to continue to find new ways to maintain and create affordable housing for everyone. Ideas include exploring participation in ARCH, a regional coalition for housing, easing the process of ADU construction, bringing new partnerships with affordable housing providers, and those are just to name a few. Those few occur to me because I have had experience in each of those areas. Fourth and finally, for me, the challenges of environmental stewardship. The thing I believe we celebrate the very most about living here is the natural beauty of North Bend, and this must be protected. This is important not only for our enjoyment of our community, but to protect our water, our health, our children's futures, and our wildlife. As environmental impacts change, we need to do more to preserve and protect our ecosystem and become better stewards of the environment.
Thank you. What would you like to see North Bend look like in 10 years?
Okay, I'm gonna give you a word picture of 10 years from now in North Bend. And I see a place where all residents thrive. There are strong partnerships between the city and the schools and the human service providers meeting critical human needs. The city is welcoming and inclusive to everyone. There are creative public-private partnerships, as well as a range of housing options for both renters and owners across a wide range of economic capacities. Residents have a strong community connection, as evidenced by festivals and events and volunteers, cherished children, and happy teens. A person biking down the main road would see a thriving downtown area with a robust set of businesses and services for residents and visitors, a welcoming and charming place to eat, visit, and shop. In 10 years, North Bend is a safe place to live and work with strong public safety and fire supports, well-maintained streets, and a shared sense of security. In 2033, North Bend is a city that sets the gold standard for environmental stewardship. More trees in the street, sensitive snow removal, water conservation, and native plantings in parks and open spaces, to just name a few examples. Finally, North Bend, 10 years from today, is recognized as having a responsive and high-quality city government, demonstrated by continued and expanded opportunities for citizen engagement, with the artwork of its citizen gracing the entrance to City Hall, a diverse and well-supported staff, an effective city council, a visionary mayor, and an exemplary fiscal report card for work well done.
Thank you. Why are you wanting to be selected for this open position? What contributions do you want to make, and what value do you bring to the table?
I want to make a positive contribution to my community, helping to sustain and create a healthy, thriving city. As a council member, the value that I can provide include experience. I have served as a council member in a different jurisdiction, as well as in other elected office. So I think that will enable me to quickly onboard and allow me to focus on learning the ins and outs and all the things that I need to learn about North Bend. I have experience working to create effective groups. And as the council welcomes new members in the coming months, there's an opportunity to use that experience to help support the council as it forms, storms, norms, and performs, becoming a highly functioning group to benefit the community. I'm creative. I have worked with multiple government agencies to achieve shared goals, from building and operating housing and shelter to serving as a board member and leader of several different foundations that provide private funding to support public sector goals. I relish thinking about ways to say yes to new ideas while working within defined constraints. I'm committed. Throughout my life, I have sought, found, and faithfully responded in the best way that I could to the needs of the community. I bring a strong work ethic, an open mind, and the time to devote to council work. Specific contributions that I'd like to make include weaving a commitment to people into the city's vision and mission statements, focusing on better environmental stewardship, collaborating more with other jurisdictions and entities, strengthening the council's work by inviting and supporting diverse viewpoints and experiences, and implementing a clear plan for affordable housing creation. I know personally that everything that we do and accomplish in life is done in the context of relationship, and I will strive to center that knowledge in all of my work as a council member.
Thank you. Why did you choose North Bend to be your community?
This is the easiest question to answer. It is stunningly beautiful. I never get tired of the mountain views, the rivers, the trees, the huge expanse of sky, and really the startling frequency of rainbows. I love that it's a small town with good schools, friendly neighbors, and easy access to the outdoors. I can walk to the city center and get my morning coffee. It gave me personally the chance to steward just over 2 acres of land where I could plant a really big garden, which is really important to me, and support wildlife and a healthy ecosystem at the same time. And finally, it is easy to get to, provided that you remember to get out of the right-hand lanes on I-90 as you approach Highway 18 during rush hour.
Thank you. Please review the community vision statement, city's mission statement, and brand statement, and tell us what provisions you strongly support and which you would propose to modify, if any.
Thank you. I strongly support all the ideas that are expressed and contained in those statements, but I would really welcome the chance to have a deep conversation about whether they fully capture the city's vision and mission for the future. I think we should dare more and prescribe less, and I would be very interested in creating a broader vision and mission statement for the city. And I have actually given this some thought. I was honored to serve on the mayor's task force for human services earlier in the year. And as we began our work, we wanted to ground ourselves in the city's stated commitments to its people. And we found that the vision and mission didn't specifically address human services. We did then review the vision and mission statements for neighboring jurisdictions and cities. I think several of them got much closer to how I might suggest the council consider modifying those statements. For instance, a vision statement that I think better captures my sense of what our vision statement might encompass comes from the city of Shoreline. And it states as follows: Shoreline is a thriving, friendly city where people of all ages, cultures, and economic backgrounds love to live, work, and play, and most of all call home. And then from that vision statement that's centered in people, and that would guide the city, and the mission statement then would tell how the city government can help achieve that vision. So a mission statement that I think is closer to my ideal would be this one, which comes from the city of Mercer Island. We provide outstanding municipal services that enhance and protect the environment, the quality of life, and the community's health, safety, and welfare. I would welcome the chance to have a deep conversation about a new vision, mission, and brand statement that really centers people and clearly articulates the city's role and responsibilities as we step boldly into a new future.
Thank you. And we'll move to follow-up questions. Mr. Rosen.
I will ask the same question of you as the others, to keep it fair. One of the bigger issues facing this community right now is growth and how to handle that. And you mentioned a couple things in what you were saying today. One, that you love the small town feel and balancing future growth. So how do you see yourself handling growth, maintaining that small town feel? And what is your vision to balance this growth? So I'd like to hear what you see the growth of this town look like.
Well, growth, of course, is required as part of our commitment to the Growth Management Act and being a city in a community of King County and the state. So growth is healthy and helpful to community, but it also needs to be accomplished in the context of maintaining and preserving community values. So that's a hard needle to thread. It's not an easy work or an easy solution, but I think by being thoughtful about balancing the things in the vision and mission for the city and balancing the requirements of the Growth Management Act, including the voices of the community and getting feedback and lots of information from those who share the community, is really helpful in trying to chart a path forward. It is interesting to both welcome growth and to be very clear about what growth is acceptable and appropriate for a small town.
Okay, Mr. Godhow.
Yeah, it's gonna be, this one's gonna be easier to be consistent. Since you were on a council and been board, tell me one of the times where you were in the minority and had to work through trying to either convince or get an issue through.
So there are many times when there's a diversity of opinion, and I might have been in a different position than my fellow electeds. I think that one of the ways that is helpful is to have the ability within the council setting to freely express ideas, to ensure that every voice is heard, including a dissenting voice or maybe a voice that's not going with the majority. In times when that has been my position, I have worked to make sure that I have concisely and clearly stated where I diverge from my fellow decision makers. Work to see if there's ways to include the things that are important to me or that I feel are important to the final decision. And usually people are pretty open to that. There are ways to accommodate differences of opinion in the final decision. So working collaboratively and then to come to a shared decision. And then it really has always been my commitment that once a decision is made, that is fully supported and we move on from there as a group.
Mr. Elwood.
Thank you. Your Honor, thank you. And thank you for rising up and coming here and to serve in your community and coming before us and answering these questions. I appreciate that. My question for you is, what promises will you make the residents of North Bend should we select you to serve on this body?
So I promise to listen, to be available, to be present in the community, when there are events, when there are ribbon cuttings, when there are celebrations, when there are challenges, when there are community meetings. I will be present and accessible. I promise to be a reminder of all of the accomplishments and things that there are to celebrate in the community. And I promise to listen carefully when people come to the podium for their 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and not look at my cell phone, and really pay attention to what people are communicating.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you for coming and joining us tonight. And my question will be pretty simple, I hope. What is your stance on commercial growth and what do you see and envision that to look like?
So as I stated before, I think growth is really important to a vibrant and economically diverse city. So I think that it is important to welcome the opportunity for growth while being very careful and considered about what growth gets a green light and what growth is not the kind of growth that you want in your community. Growth is important. It has to be the right growth in the right way, and serving the needs of the community.
Thank you. Ms. Cullen.
Yes, thank you for applying for this open position. My question is, why did you not run for election?
Well, I've considered it actually, but I really feel like I'm new in this community. And so I felt that I needed some more time. Filing week is, I think, in May now. And I was in the midst of planning Oktoberfest and thought, let me get some more community grounding. Served on the Human Service Task Force right around the same time. And so I think that was the better approach for me, is to get to learn more before I ran for office.
And Mr. Jocelyn.
I appreciate very much your answers and thoughtfulness that clearly went into them. A primary responsibility of representative government is looking after the interests of the city. Any comment on approaches to balancing the interests of individuals and property owners over those of city government?
Well, that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? So for me, what's really important is to utilize city staff to help articulate the city's needs. And my interactions with staff have been so strong and positive. Balancing the not just the needs of the city, but the obligation of city council members to make sure that you are an advocate and supporter of the city's needs. I think education goes a long way in helping people to understand the tension between balancing perhaps an individual viewpoint with the viewpoint of the city or the whole. It doesn't always mean that if people understand what you're trying to measure, that they agree with how you balance that. And there are times as an elected official that you're going to make unpopular decisions that have to be made. And I can tolerate that so long as I feel convinced that every opportunity has been given to educate, explain, and listen and evaluate and include input in the decisions that are made in the city's behalf.
Thank you. And with that, we want to give you about a minute to summarize or wrap up, and we appreciate it.
Well, I do appreciate the opportunity to put my name put my name forth for consideration. I think it is a wonderful testament to the city that so many people have decided to apply for an open council vacancy. And so that is an indication of a vibrant and healthy city, which I credit you for that. You have a difficult decision in front of you. And I hope that you will consider including me in your work because of the experience and commitment that I can bring to the council. I know that you have a hard decision and I think you can't make a wrong choice, but I do hope that you choose me.
Thank you very much. Evening, Mr. White. Thank you for coming tonight
Thanks for having me.
onto the podium. Way we're gonna do this, we're gonna give you about a minute to give us an introduction, then Ms. Cullen's gonna ask you the 5 questions you've seen, and we'll do follow-up questions with council members and give you a minute to close.
That sounds good. Before I really get started on the 1 minute thing, I know you've been here a long time, but I need to address the dinosaur shirt in the room. I decided to involve my daughter in this process, and I told her I was nervous and said, maybe you can help me pick out a shirt to wear. And I forgot that the Father's Day gift I'd gotten from her was the short sleeve, like Tommy Bahama dinosaur shirt. So she selected this and I obliged, but rest assured, if I do get appointed, I will not rely on my daughter's advice for any matters. Just want to get that out of the way, since this is all right. Thanks. Anyways, thank you all for being here and for having me. And thanks to the mayor and council members and all you people. I was a graduate of the inaugural North Bend Citizens Academy, and honestly, that's one of the things that sort of inspired me to be here tonight. I was born in Ellensburg, Washington. However, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to the University of Illinois and majored in plant biology. I met my spouse there first 2 weeks of school, and we've been together 28 years. After that, I got my master's in molecular plant biology at Arizona State University. We moved up to Seattle in 2007. Lived in West Seattle before moving here. Been here for 2.5 years now. I'm currently a molecular biologist in the Fishery Sciences Department at the University of Washington, studying oysters and other shellfish, basically looking at how they respond to stress, heat stress, ocean acidification, and looking at their DNA and RNA, things of that nature. I live over in Cedar Landing over by Opstad, and I have a 7-year-old daughter who has eclectic tastes in t-shirts. So that's.
Thank you. Ms. Cullen.
Yes, so the first question is, what do you consider to be the biggest challenges facing the city?
Yeah, for me, the one thing that jumps out the most is climate change and dealing with water availability or potentially lack thereof. I hope it's not a doomsday type thing, but I don't think water availability is going to continue to increase as time goes on with the way climate has changed. And long term, 30, 50 years from now, it concerns me. I also recognize that housing seems to be an issue in the city, both cost of living and availability. Additionally, I was doing some research before coming tonight, and looked at some of the US Census data from 2020. And they said that North Bend has 12.5% of its population living below the poverty line. And I was shocked by that. And then in turn, it seems the national mean is about 11% of people living below the poverty line. So it seems as though North Bend is above the national average. I was shocked, and yeah, that's something I hadn't considered previously until this week. I would really like to see North Bend be able to address some of these issues. The cost of living has skyrocketed, and I would love something like North Bend to implement its own minimum wage that's higher than the state standard, as a sort of quick potential means to get people money to be able to potentially afford housing in this town, as opposed to having to wait for development to take place, because that's a many multi-year process, as opposed to something that, at least in my mind, not being fully versed in bureaucracy of politics and how things go, but in my mind, setting a higher minimum wage in town could be potentially put in place faster, sooner. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second question is, what would you like to see North Bend look like in 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would really like the downtown area to be more vibrant, and have more places to go, places to hang out, places to mingle with the community. In a perfect world, I would really like the auto dealership to be relocated and maybe put in some sort of promenade with shops on either side, seating, an outdoor, green space for kids to play in. If you've been to South Fork Cafe, I think that's one of the major draws for families in town. You can go out to eat. It's kind of a free for all with the kids, but it's great. Parents get to hang out, get to see people they, don't normally see while the kids are out and they get to play. Additionally, if you've been to Scott's during the summer with your kids, you can't sit outside. You can't find a seat. There's nowhere to then take your food and sit down and eat that's nearby. It'd be great if that auto dealership was somewhere else, because that also just, for me, really kills the vibe of walking through downtown. You start walking from Scott's and that entire block, there's nothing. I mean, the car dealership is something, but to me, that's not what I want from the downtown. I want shops with, art. I want restaurants. I want pubs, things of that nature. I also would really like the outlet mall to be revamped, but that's probably beyond a 10-year project, and it's complicated because obviously the city doesn't own that, but something like U Village, something that is more reflective of small town character as opposed to a vast sea of asphalt, just does not fit with North Bend in my mind, in my experience. I also would really like to somehow figure out a way for all city employees to get some sort of living stipend so that we can ensure that city employees can live in North Bend and be part of this community, especially public works employees, those who are on call. I remember during the Citizens Academy, Mark informed us that, there are people that are on call that don't live in town. And if there's weather issues, snow, heavy rains, wind, and they're not in town, they can't make it here, which then leads to, pardon the pun, snowballing of problems. So it would be really great if we could figure out a way to support these employees and get them living in town. I'd like to see some smaller, more affordable homes. And then finally, it'd be cool if we had a pool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Why are you wanting to be selected for this open position? What contributions do you want to make and what value do you bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Citizens Academy was great. Thank you again for everybody for putting that on the time. I mean, it was really fun, and I can't believe how much I enjoyed getting people excited about government. Like talking to my neighbors and stuff every week. That was what I was looking forward to after North Bend, Citizens Academy. I was like, oh, dude, I got to talk to Nick and tell him about all this crazy stuff. People don't realize how complex even a small town is, and the people that work here and the cool things that they do. So I really geeked out on that, and it was great. Councilmember Miller came to a couple of those sessions, and yeah, being able to engage with the council member as a citizen was awesome. And it was just a great experience, and so that was one thing why I wanted to get into, is just sort of be a liaison and someone who can build excitement for city government and increase engagement. Additionally, this summer, research scientists went on strike at the University of Washington. We were on strike for 6 days, and that really kind of sold me on what it means to be part of a community and being able to, support those who can't potentially support themselves and lift each other up. And when everyone works together, we succeed. And so I think that also motivated me to get involved in this and sort of bring that approach to community and say, hey, we need to look at help those who can't help themselves. And if we're supporting everybody at the bottom, then we all benefit from it. As far as contributions go, I'm a scientist, which is probably not a usual background for coming to city council. I'd probably be much more comfortable, to be honest, hanging out with Jeff at the wastewater treatment plant, talking about colony forming units, flocculation, pH, sodium bicarbonate, bacterial counts, things of that nature. But, you know, I mean, being a scientist means you have to be open-minded. You have to consider all options that are available that might explain the results that you're seeing. You can't see data and just accept it. You have to question it and figure out whether or not it makes sense. Additionally, as a scientist, you're always collaborating. It's never just one person working on a project. You rely on the expertise of other people in different fields to help make well-rounded guesses and decisions about the data they gather. And so with that, you know, I mean, I think more data is important. And I noticed, you know, Councilmember Elwood, even informal polls like he ran during his election campaign are extremely useful for getting more granular information about the community. The community survey, you know, I've been kind of geeking out on that a lot. It's great, but there are also data gaps there, right? Like, for example, the community survey didn't actually ask anything about crime. It didn't ask which groups, which areas of town have been impacted by crime. To me, that was kind of a glaring oversight. And, you know, that's okay. I mean, we can't have a survey that's so long that, you know, it would take days to finish. However, these are things that we still need to consider. Something like disability. There was no questions about, are you able-bodied or disabled? And if we don't know those answers, we can't build the community and build town to accommodate everybody that needs to be accommodated.
Okay. Why did you choose North Bend to be your community?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the most bland answer. I mean, we lived in West Seattle for 10 years. We lived in a 3-story townhouse, and we have a child and a dog, and ran out of space. And we got outbid over and over again in West Seattle. And during the pandemic, we found ourselves constantly drifting out to North Bend because there were things to do, and the outdoors were amazing. And my spouse and I were like city people, you know, like that's where we always wanted to be: nightlife, concerts, and then family stuff comes along and nature becomes much more engaging and interesting and accessible. So found ourselves coming out here all the time and said, hey, we have the privilege of being able to work from home. We can do this North Bend thing. So yeah, so after visiting here, being on hikes and stuff like that, you know, the small town nature and the quaintness, and of course, you know, the scenery, it kind of sold itself.
Thank you. Please review the community vision statement, city's mission statement, and brand statement, and tell us what provisions you strongly support and which you would propose to modify, if any.
Yeah, for the community vision statement, none of those 3 sentences really struck me. You know, maybe the first one seemed incomplete. That's okay. And I came up with something. I came up with my own vision statement that I felt worked better. And it's nurturing nature, building community, shaping tomorrow. It's simple, kind of to the point, and of course, to me, summarizes what North Bend wants to do and be going forward. The mission statement, I mean, this isn't really a statement. It's many things. And so I also came up with another alternative, which is just a single sentence, and it's a statement saying, we commit to enhancing the quality of life in North Bend by promoting community engagement, environmental stewardship, and economic vitality, creating a place where residents and businesses thrive together. And again, and I know I'm biased, but to me, that's a single statement that summarizes what I think about when I think of North Bend. And finally, the brand statement. It's nice, but I think it's too wordy. When I think of brand statements, I think of short, to the point, and memorable. Just do it. Got milk? Where's the beef? Things like this. So I think something needs to be shortened. And if you may have guessed, I came up with a couple of options. Miles of smiles. And the idea here, you know, it's corny, sure. But, you know, the idea is that it's, you know, miles of smiles, meaning the people here, you know, are friendly and approachable. But it's also we have miles and miles of hiking trails and biking trails of which people enjoy. So miles of smiles. You can switch it around and say smiles, smiles 4 miles, you know, an alternative there. In any case, I think the brand statement should be shorter and more memorable or more easy to remember. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We'll open to council for follow-up questions. Mr. Rosen.
Sure. Same question I posed to the others, I'll pose to you.
Sure.
One of the topics that's often coming up right now in the community is talking about growth and how that's going to affect our community. Just tell me about your thoughts on residential growth and what you'd like to see here.
Yeah, you know, of course, this is the most difficult question, and you know, if there was a solution that made everyone happy, it would happen. And it's also challenging because none of us in this room would be here if North Bend didn't grow. I mean, at some point, it was just bare land, you know, but over time it has grown and people have lived here. I think we need to have more housing. The demand is here. Prices are sky high because of the demand. Even I feel like even if we put a moratorium on growth, there's no more supply. People still want to move out here. It's not going to alleviate an issue, any of those cost of living issues associated with housing. So I think potentially just adding some more apartments and or smaller housing would provide some relief.
Mr. Godhill.
Thank you. I'm going to try to be consistent in my questions. But have you worked on any boards or commissions? And if you did, tell me about a time where you were in the minority and you wanted to convince people of your side, and how'd you get there?
No, I've not served on any boards or commissions of that nature, but you know, in science world, which is where I come from, you know, convincing people is showing them proof, showing them data. And so, if, you know, a graduate student comes in and says, oh, you know, like, this is awesome, I got some great results. You know, I can say, let's look at this a little bit further. We have data here that shows that what I'm saying is correct and what your interpretation is potentially not correct. My decision-making is usually data-driven. And if I don't have the data, I'm not always comfortable committing to a cause.
Thank you.
Mr. Elwood.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for stepping up and being here tonight and answering our questions and going through this process. Really appreciate that. I too enjoy studying oysters with heat and how they react, especially on my grill. So have some commonality.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question for you is, what promises will you make to the residents of North Bend should you be selected to serve with us on this body?
I mean, one promise I would make would be to decrease the amount of poverty, people living below the poverty line in this town. I think I can commit to that. And, you know, hopefully the idea with that is through an increase in minimum wage. The other thing is that I could promise is, you know, engaging in better sustainability. Like, for example, like water usage. I would like to see commercial operations be, you know, pay more at a proportionate level of what they're using. If I'm not mistaken, residents are billed based off of usage. You know, there are 3 blocks or tiers. So those residents that are using the highest amount pay the most. I think, if I understand from looking at the website this week, that commercial entities, you know, they pay a single flat usage charge, you know, so that if they use 100 cubic foot meters or whatever the units are for water, they pay the same amount as opposed to a small, you know, like QFC. They're blowing through water and have a small business that just, you know, has a couple of flush toilets. it doesn't seem fair that QFC is able to use all this water and not pay extra. So I would commit to sustainability and water usage and
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sam, it's a joy to see you again. You entertain me immensely. Please let your daughter know the important news that Member Miller really enjoys your shirt you're wearing.
will do. I will pass it along.
Probably my most important thing to say.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, how do you see yourself, if appointed to council, engaging with the community?
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, just being a neighborhood liaison, and getting people excited about the things that happen behind the scenes at City Hall. You know, I volunteer at my daughter's school. We walk to school every day, so I, talk to the parents, talk to the crossing guards. I see people in the community and talk to them every day. And even if they're bored about some of the civic engagement stuff that I shared with them over the Citizens North Bend Academy, Citizens Academy. Yeah, it's just, I would like being out and about and telling people about what happens here and telling them about all the cool people that work here, and how friendly everyone is and how talented people are. And, like, that's not something that people generally talk about. I mean, most of the time people hang out and talk about Seahawks and, lament the fact that the Sonics still aren't back here, but I much more enjoy like kind of geeking out on how city government works. And
Thank you very much.
You, Ms. Cullen.
Yes, thank you for applying for this open position. My question is, why did you not run for election?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, it seemed like a lot of work. I'll put it that way. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of work beyond just, city council duties and city council meetings and behind the scenes. I mean, campaigning is a whole nother thing. I mean, Errol, told me he went and knocked down 1,000 doors. I do not have time to knock on 1,000 doors over a 2-month time span. And I'm free in the evenings and my work schedule is extremely flexible, but not that flexible. And so, that's kind of what it came down to. Like, it's interesting, but it's a lot of work. And there's also the element of like going up against somebody. I'm not very confrontational. And so, not that you're undermining anyone by going up against them in an election, because that's how the process works, but feels that way. So.
Mr. Jocelyn.
Appreciate your appearing and taking the time to come before us. My 3 children were all born in Urbana, Illinois. I worked for the University of Illinois for 13 years. And with that, I will not ask any specific questions of you this evening.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. With that, Sam, we'll give you 1 minute to kind of summarize.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I know most of the people that are involved in City Hall, and a lot of the applicants have backgrounds in business and dealing with commercial interests and that sort of thing. And I certainly understand the importance of that. However, I feel like that sort of background is generally pretty well represented already. Someone with a background of mine would help round out the council as far as experience in different areas. Right? I don't think any of you have experienced like growing bacterial colonies and dealing with people in wastewater management and being able to go to Jeff and reminisce about HPLC and stuff like that. So I just think I would bring add an element to the council that would round out our backgrounds. And also, I don't know, I'm a friendly dude and can get along well with people. So that goes a long way towards success. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And I want to thank all of you for putting yourself forward tonight and taking the time to be here with us and listen to the questions and provide your thoughtful answers. At this time, council will be moving into executive session to evaluate candidate qualifications pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)(h). We will start with a 35-minute session starting at 9:16. Council, we'll see you in the adjournment. And I'm asking legal counsel to join us. Thank you. We are re-adjourning here in council chambers. We restarted the recording after extended executive sessions. I want to make a statement first to all the candidates in the room. Our great appreciation for all of you putting yourself forward, coming forward, and making yourself a part of this process. I want to encourage all of you also, if you're not chosen, to please stay engaged with the city. Please do pursue, whether it's a commission or another office, because we do see great citizens wanting to be a part of their community. So please do that. There is going to be a motion read here in a moment. And when we do that, I want you to be aware, we're going to ask you to please not contact any of the council members between now and next week. And with that, Madam Pro Tem.
Motion to invite candidates Errol Tremolata and Sam White to second round interviews on November 21st at 7 p.m.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
I.
Motion carries. It is unanimous. Thank you for that, council. And with that, for this evening, we're moving on. The clerk will be in touch with the two candidates named regarding additional process. There will be additional questions asked in the second interview. With that, we are moving on to item number 3 on our agenda. This is a presentation on the affordable housing alternatives. Mr. Miller, I think you're going to lead it off and then turn it over to James. Is that right?
That's right.
All right.
Mayor and council members, we had a discussion about the potential of using our affordable housing money for an affordable housing project, and we had brought forward to you a particular site and a proposal, and we'd never reached either us in our negotiations with the applicant or in discussions with you, reached the point where we thought that was the right fit. And so one of the inquiries that you had back to us is, what other uses of money other than land banking could this money be used for to obtain affordable housing? Looking at 2 metrics. One, how much affordability could we buy? In other words, not all at 80%, maybe 60%, some at 30, but stretching the money to reach real workforce housing. That was the first thing that you were interested in. And the second one is the term of the affordability. How can we spend the money in a way to make that affordability last the longest term? So what I've done, I've been working with James Henderson, our economic development manager, to do a very quick presentation to show how the monies could be used. And concluding, I think that for a lot of good practical reasons, land banking allows you the greatest opportunity for both the depth of affordability and the time period for affordability. But I think it's important that you look at the options, you understand them, and you either agree with us or tell us why you don't. So Jim's ready to do that for you. It's a very quick presentation. I think the way this is supposed to work is that you'll have the presentation and then we'll go into executive session to deliberate and decide what your outcome will be. And we have an agenda bill prepared so that if you indeed decide to go ahead with a land acquisition, we have an agenda bill for you this evening. So without any further ado, James, if you want to pick it up and go.
Yes, thank you very much, Dave, and good evening, everybody. Again, James Henderson, Economic Development Manager for the City of North Bend. And so I'll get the presentation going here just momentarily.
James, I'm not sure I'm fully hearing you. Is that mic on.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
How's that? Okay, great. So you may be wondering why the Economic Development Manager is presenting on affordable housing issues. And it's really because affordable housing has really become really sort of a primary driver of economic issues, really both in North Bend and across the region. As I've met with companies in North Bend, from small business owners on North Bend Way, all the way to other businesses out in other parts of North Bend. One of the things I consistently hear from them is the ability to not get the workforce they need to really make their businesses grow and expand. And a lot of that is because some of the businesses really point to the lack of affordable housing here in North Bend or even in the nearby area to be able to house their employees and be able to work at their establishments. So this is basically just kind of an overview of some affordable housing alternatives that the city could potentially pursue to bring more affordable housing stock to the city. So we're going to really kind of focus on three main types of options: housing subsidies, housing rehabilitation, and then property acquisition. And just because of the lateness of the hour, I've kind of cut this presentation quite a bit back. I've got some back slides to kind of show the trend lines and data. Okay, well, we can go for it if you'd like, but I can send that to you later if you'd like to kind of review. So in terms of rental subsidy program, this is really a fairly straightforward program, although there is quite a bit of administrative burden associated with it. It's basically providing rental income, rental subsidies to tenants to be able to buy into market rate rental housing. And so for the purposes of this study or this briefing, we're only going to talk about rental housing, not basically home ownership. So the implementation, basically we would need either to establish a housing authority or dedicated staff to really kind of administer the program. And any resident that takes advantage of the program, in other words, they're getting the subsidy, they have to be certified basically upon receiving the subsidy to make sure that they actually qualify at the area median income level for the subsidy program. And then as they continue, they have to be recertified each year. The pros to this is basically you can get local workers into market rate rental housing. It also, as you know, enhances local businesses and really increases that local workforce. Some of the cons associated with rental subsidy, again, sort of a heavy administrative burden for the city to oversee because you're dealing with individuals who you're providing the subsidy to. So there's a lot of monitoring requirement to that. And it also doesn't really ensure that long-term affordable housing as the subsidy is to the individual. It's not to the property. It's not to the place where the affordable housing is taking place. And as you know, people can kind of move into the area and then move out. So it just basically is associated with the individual. And it also really doesn't take advantage of the other affordable housing programs or tools that I'll talk about in a few minutes. So just to kind of run through a scenario of what a rental subsidy program could look like. This is the one that's sort of somewhat theoretical. Basically, it's sort of an 18-unit apartment with rental support for individuals both at 60% as well as 30% AMI, and the subsidy will be provided or through the Affordable Housing Tax Fund. So as you can see here, if we're taking basically a one-bedroom rent of about $22,930 a month, if you look at a subsidy for someone who is on 60% AMI and 30% AMI, you can see those numbers there of what that subsidy would be per individual or per unit. And then that carries forward to that annual subsidy. And then, of course, as we go to a three-bedroom rental place, the subsidy is quite a bit more because the rent is quite a bit more. And then as you carry this forward over the course of a year, in this scenario, this estimate, basically, we're looking at, nearly $380,000 to subsidize 18 units split between 1 and 3 bedrooms. So again, it's quite a bit of cost in order to do the subsidy program, given the limited funds we do have. But this is, again, one option for affordable housing. The second option is to look at property rehabilitation. So this is basically taking an existing apartment building and then working with the landowner or the building owner to basically rehabilitate the property to support affordable housing. Again, like the previous potential affordable housing project, there would be quite a bit of administrative burden associated with this. That's because essentially the city would either need to, again, establish a housing authority or really assign dedicated staff to administer the program. And what's different about this program is that in addition to making sure that all the tenants are certified and qualified for essentially the AMI for this rehabilitation project, the city would also have to essentially oversee all the construction of that rehabilitation as well. So again, quite a bit of different types of administrative burden for the city here. Again, it could be either a grant or a low interest loan that could be used in terms of funds for rehabilitation. So the pros of this, it does actually ensure long-term affordability because typically when you enter into these type of rehabilitation programs, it's around 20 years or more. It creates additional tax revenue through the city through construction and business and sales use tax, and also enhances local businesses and increases the local workforce as well. But the cons, so again, significant administrative burden for the city because of just the nature of the project. It's difficult to identify property owners, those who are willing to really take part in this type of a program, because for them, it basically gives up being able to rent those facilities at market rate because they have to provide a lower rate to the tenants there. Another big con, and I think this is really more of a risk factor, is because housing stock varies in, as you know, condition, age, and construction methods. And I found this out about my house a couple of months ago. There are things that are kind of not what you would think would happen as you begin to enter into a rehab project. So, there could be significantly more costs than anticipated as you enter into a construction rehabilitation program. So that's sort of the pros and cons of that type of affordable housing scenario. And then we'll look at the last one here. And that is basically property acquisition. And just like the name said, you're basically purchasing a property for affordable rental housing that can be used to support, again, sort of affordable types of rents for people across different AMIs. In this type of implementation, the city would acquire the property at agreed upon purchase price, or they would acquire both the land and the building as well. And then if you're just buying the land, the city could identify an affordable housing developer to develop the property and then ensure affordability compliance going forward. So what are some of the pros of this? Well, again, like the rehabilitation one, ensures long-term affordability. Comparatively to the other two programs, it does have a lower city administrative burden because you're basically just acquiring the property and then working with in this scenario, working with a developer to basically put the project in place. It does also allow the city to utilize the full range of affordable housing tools. And in the next slide, we'll kind of look at those other tools that can be brought to bear in this type of effort. And then it can also support underutilized properties as well. Some of the cons, it does assume some risk for the city for an affordable housing project because we would own the property and then we would have to, again, sort of work with a developer to make sure it does get developed for those affordable housing purposes. And in the meantime, as we own the property or we own the building, there could be a loss in property tax revenue for the period of time that we actually hold the deed for the property. So again, a third scenario here for affordable housing. So if we look at the affordable housing toolkit, there's a number of things we can really bring to bear on supporting either subsidy, rehabilitation, or acquisition. As you can see here, there's very few things we can actually bring to use for the rental subsidy program. That's essentially the affordable housing sales tax credit. That purpose for rental subsidy is allowed in that act. For rehabilitation as well as acquisitions, there's quite a few more things that we can bring to bear. In addition to the housing sales tax and sales tax credit, we can also look at impact fee exemptions. In other words, trying to reduce the land cost for putting a project in place, which would then transfer on to more affordable properties, more affordable rentals at the unit. There's also real estate excise tax 2, or REIT 2 as it's called. That can be used to both rehabilitate existing properties, but also to acquire properties as well. It's sort of a mechanism to go through to be able to use those funds, but it's one that we can use to bring to bear for these two types of projects. In addition, there's the multifamily tax exemption. So that's either an 8 or 12-year exemption on property tax. Again, through rehabilitation or acquisition, that can be used to bring to bear. So that would, again, kind of lower the cost of the overall project and then also ensure, again, affordability. And then community development block grants, that's through Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. And primarily those funds are just for rehabilitation there. So as we kind of like look at the different types of options that we have in place and what the city, I think, could really sort of effectively do, we find that property acquisition really has the greatest ability to assure that long-term affordability with the least administrative burden for the city. Housing subsidies provide really an opportunity for local workers to rent at market rate rentals, but again, that administrative burden that's associated with it and that it doesn't really sort of ensure long-term affordability doesn't really make it probably the most ideal way to really kind of solve the affordable housing issue, both in North Bend and then across the region. And then, of course, housing rehabilitation, again, can provide that long-term affordability, but really has the most administrative burden and probably the greatest risk, especially with construction costs, and then also the potential cost if they run into some sort of issue with the property. And that basically is the presentation. So thank you very much and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, James. Council, questions? Mr. O.
Thank you for that thoughtful presentation. Appreciate that. A lot of my initial questions coming in, you've answered, which is great. So two immediate ones. When thinking about other grant monies that are available to us from other higher taxing authorities or other agencies, whatever, what have you, sorry. Is there a higher probability of securing rental subsidy assistant through other grant monies if we have that rental subsidy already in place? Because many times, you know, grant money gets more grant money. So I'm just wondering what the world or the landscape is with respect to rental subsidies. That's my first question.
No, thank you for that. It's a great question. I have to be perfectly candid. I'm not sure if there's other grant opportunities out there. I mean, aside from the tax credit that we currently collect at the city, there could be potentially some matching opportunities with the Washington State Department of Commerce. So that would be something we could look into.
Okay. And then my second question is, when thinking about rehabbing and acquiring property, specifically property that most likely has other housing units on it, especially if a property owner is willing to sell it to the city or do something with the city to turn it into more affordable housing. How does that work with the folks who may already reside on that house? Is it part of a contract where we work with the existing partner, property owner to they then relocate or evict, or, you know, however they get the person off the property? Or is that something that we then become landlords for until we break ground? How does that kind of relationship work?
James, I think it can help you out a little bit here. There are some laws with regard to housing relocation that you have to observe. So if you're going to remove people from a property that you're going to redevelop, then you have to deal with those relocation requirements. In most cases, the thing you try to do is you try to accommodate that particular individual in the new project if you can.
Yeah.
But that usually means that you have to relocate them somewhere for some period of time.
Right.
So I think there are some laws in place now that protect people and require you to participate in relocation. I've seen all kinds of ways of it being done. In fact, I worked for a redevelopment agency that actually rented units for 2 years before the place became vacant. It became vacant enough that there was no displacement, and they just had to rent the rooms and keep it vacant. But it was a large redevelopment project. It had a lot of jobs for people. It was really worth it for the community, so they did it.
And when do those laws kick in? Is it when let's say the city is contemplating some sort of partnership, or after the city takes possession of the property, or the city signs paper to help rehabilitate a property?
Well, you're not responsible for relocation until
we take
it's
ownership.
imminent that you have ownership,
Yeah.
and B, that you have a clear intent to develop the property. The reason that we looked at the things we looked at is that they're commonly used. And the reason that I like the land banking is if you put a request for proposals together as the landowners, and we go out and we tell people we want them to take advantage of as many of the toolkit items as they can, then you're going to get people who really know how to use those, and they'll use the largest combination to reach affordability to be able to be the developer for that property. And then these are people who do this for a living, and they know how to employ those tools. So what we're trying to look at is how could we make something attractive to someone who can deliver this product for us without us being tremendously involved with administration and construction management and all that sort of thing. So if they can deliver the product for us and get what we want through the RFP process, we stipulate that. And through a development agreement, which is recorded with the property, those obligations then continue with that development.
Okay, and this is gonna seem like a silly third question. When thinking about our zoning and the best available properties that may be there, because we don't know who will want to sell or work with us. Is there anything that we need to do on either zoning or any ordinances or anything like that, housekeeping type of stuff to say that these are the type of relationships that we may go into? So for example, if I think about a neighborhood that may have an HOA, and let's say there's a property owner within an HOA and there's codes and covenants and restrictions and things like that, would the city need to, is there any sort of, how would we navigate something like that if there's existing contracts or existing restrictions on those particular properties?
Yeah, it was kind of a long question. You want to go back to the beginning?
Yes. It's a long night.
Yeah.
This is when my creative brain turns on and I start thinking of, I know, I do too. It's in like 6 hours. My point is that, is there anything that we need to do either within our zoning or ordinances to make these kind of relationships happen, number one? And number two, if we find that there are property owners who are interested in this, let's say, for example, I have a 1.5 acre property in a community that has an HOA with codes and covenants, and I want to sell that to the city to make that more affordable housing. Is there something that we would need to do to be able to have that relationship?
So let me deal with the covenant issue first. Covenants are private property restrictions. And I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole if I was getting into this. These things are hard enough without getting into that. But with respect to zoning, I think the best tool we have in our toolkit for this to be able to look at anything is a development agreement. Because what you want to do is you want a tailored proposal that doesn't go too far and do things that you don't want to see built, but you want enough flexibility that it will get built. So trying to fine tune your zoning code would really be playing around with things that might not fit. But if you have a specific proposal, you know exactly what they're asking for, and you can use a development agreement to accommodate it.
Thank you. Anyone, Johnson?
Quick question. I'll start off, the subsidies, one of the things that I like most about it is that we can implement it quickly and provide relief, but listening to the presentation, the downside is the massive amount of bureaucracy and staff that's going to be required to manage that. Are there ways to manage that through organizations where they can take that burden on and we can provide the subsidy?
Well, there are, but I think Arch would do that. But I think the difficulty you have is you have to find out how can you get the word out to people who will accept the subsidies, and not only as a renter, but as the landlord, because it's usually both of them have to work together. Because if somebody comes in, they don't have the full faith and credit, let's say, to pay the full rent.
I'm talking more about organizations that could run these programs that we don't have to devote a large number of.
We do, but that's another administrative cost. And if you looked at the cost there, I think it was about $373,000 a year. If we were to take $1 million, 3 years, you're out. So you take care of people for 3 years, maybe, depending upon what your administrative costs are, might be less than. So we just thought from the standpoint of bang for the buck, it's not going to go very far.
Jonathan, I don't know that you get what you're looking for.
I said, yes, Arch will do it. Yes.
Okay,
do it.
so there are organizations, if we so choose to move in that direction, that could help us
right
and reduce our burden. Thank you.
Yes, it is possible. Although talking with them, they also possibly have a capacity issue. So the answer is yes, there are organizations, but the answer may also be no, they can't take us on. So the answer could be no, we don't have the capability of finding that organization, but there are organizations out there that do it.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. That helped.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're good. Okay. Then at this time, council is going to go back into executive. Sorry, you stopped me cold. We're going to go back into executive session to discuss property acquisition pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)(b). We expect to be in executive session 20 minutes. There may be action, and that executive session starts now. All right, thank you, everybody. We are back in session following the executive session, and we have a motion. Mr. Elwood.
Thank you, Your Honor. Motion to approve AB 23-132, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a purchase and sale agreement between the city of North Bend and William M. Glazier for the acquisition of real property and property rights related to construction of affordable housing.
Second.
Motion to second by Mr. Godhelf. Is that what I heard? All right. Council, any comments?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a good opportunity for us. We've been promoting affordable housing. We've been trying to get creative, and I think the staff were coming up with some different innovative options. So to me, this is a really good step forward. We're trying to do something on our own dime with our own free will. Hopefully we can get more cool things like this. So thank you for putting this all together, and I do hope it passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Godhelf.
I agree. I mean, it's the whole idea of this is to create affordable housing, something we've been trying to do for how many years, and this is an opportunity to hopefully move forward and do something good for this community. So I support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Rosen.
Yep. Fully support this. I just hope this is part of a multi-pronged effort to combat affordability issues in the valley. I think we had some great options presented to us tonight. I appreciate those, and hopefully we can act on several fronts and tackle this. Thanks.
Ms. Cullen.
I fully support this as well, and I think the location is ideal for affordable housing for citizens in our community.
Thank you. Ms. Miller.
I will be fully supporting this tonight. I want to thank staff for the creative measures that you've taken here. It's been a very interesting ride so far, and I think there's a great future from this point forward too. So I'm excited.
Thank you. Mr. Jocelyn, anything?
Very exciting.
I'll work off of Mr. Jocelyn's enthusiasm and say I am absolutely thrilled that this is moving forward. Having worked on affordable housing for ever, it feels like, and been very frustrated over the last 4 years with trying to bring something to fruition for many reasons, not least a bit we're finding the right project, but more with some of the other things out external to us that we face that kind of set back efforts. But this goes back again that we've got a path forward. We've got a great opportunity. Council saw the opportunity, and I appreciate that they not only continue to recognize that, but really wanted to jump on it. And we never have perfect information, but we've got enough, and I think it's going to work out well for you. So with that, motion before you is to approve AB 23-132, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a purchase and sale agreement between the city of North Bend and William M. Glazier for the acquisition of real property and property rights related to construction of affordable housing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. It is unanimous. Last item on tonight's agenda is public comment. If there is anyone here from the public who wishes to address council, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak, starting with your name and address for the record. Anyone in chambers?
Don't even think about it.
Come on, it's not midnight yet. Well, do we have anyone online?
Not at this time.
Not a single person online. Why am I not surprised? Motion to adjourn, please.
So move.
Second, all in favor.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, council.